Hello, welcome back to the ministry, and we're back for part 2. And I'm only making this a part 2 because I'm still talking about the exact same thing I was talking about in the previous video, but I'm bringing in the part about kingdom marriage. You are no longer in the rainstorm. The warfare that you have been experiencing, you are not going to experience. Okay? Does that mean that you're not going to have any warfare? Sorry to say. There still will be attempts. But you're coming into a new phase. Okay? Jesus, I'm giving this word to you because there's some things that I've been seeing lately, and I don't know how much you want me to reveal. So I need you to guard my mouth from speaking anything that would be too much information. So give me wisdom. Okay, let's go. In the previous part, I talked about you are driving out of the storm. Now, I mentioned, if you go back in that part, I talked about the prophetess was sitting in the car with her husband. That in itself prophesies. Your husband is going to be the leader in your household. We know this. He's going to be the head. You are going to have to submit to him. Okay? We've already discussed this part. He was driving the vehicle that she was in. Okay, God, come on. Make this work. He was driving. She was the passenger. This allotted her the ability to speak what she needed to speak. And she was talking to somebody. Now, I spoke about the fact that they were driving out of a storm, okay? In the video, she was discussing a particular person that had been in a relationship previously, and the person did not value their worth. A lot of us have been in relationships. The people did not value us. I talked about the Leah and Rachel dynamic in a previous video. That Leah was not looked upon as being the pretty one. She wasn't the one anybody wanted. And it was only the uncle, father, what have you, that kind of forced her on Jacob. Some of us were looked upon as not being worthy. And it's funny, a lot of the women, when I hear their stories, even it's another YouTuber I used to follow, and I've been seeing her videos pop up recently on my feed. Before she met her husband, she had been in previous relationships. In her testimony, that it wasn't even really that she had been in the relationship. It was the fact that she had been attracted to certain guys, and the guys always did not ever look at her as valuable enough to be the person to date. I've been through that, where I was in the relationship and it was like I wasn't the main chick. He was trying to portray me as it, but he had somebody else. So I've been through that experience, meaning they didn't look at you as being what's the word? Valuable enough to make their number one chick. They keep you telling you that you're the number one, but they turn around and sleeping around with whoever they want to sleep around. That's what I dealt with in my previous relationship. And it was funny because I ran into a woman when I was living here about 6 years ago, and the woman said, "You thought you were the number one chick." I was like, and that stuck with me. So my point being is, we've walked through storms in our relationships. God had to bring us into a level of preparation for these marriages that pulled a lot of beliefs and belief systems from previous relationships we've been in out of us. That relationship I was in previously tore me up. It was like being married to that person, but it tore me up. I stayed in it for 7 years, off and on. But the work that I had to do to pull out of me all of the disgusting parts that had been implanted into me through the just darkness of that relationship. And it was a dark relationship. I remember coming out of it and experiencing a level of darkness. I cannot explain to you that when that relationship ended, the last time I was with that person, within a few weeks prior to that, I had a dream. It wasn't even a dream. It was a waking vision. I woke up one morning and I don't swear, but I saw a figure standing over me. It looked like death. If I'm lying, I'm dying. It was fully cloaked and standing over my bed. And that was a few weeks before our relationship ended. I was not going here, God. Where did this come from? But the point is, you're coming out of, you had to go through your preparation period. And in that preparation period, God had to pull things out of you. He had to open doors you thought was shut. He had to show you things that you had to experience. He had to give you wisdom. He had to take you through a valley that was so dark you thought you were never getting out of. And then he gives you pop-ups trying to tell you, I know you're in a valley right now. I know you don't see the end of this, but I'm going to show you marriage. And you're sitting up there looking at God. If you don't stop showing me this marriage, I ain't nowhere near that right now. My head ain't here. I don't want to see nothing on no marriage. And that's what some of y'all was like when you was in the valley. You was like, marriage what? Why? Do you see where I am right now? Stop talking about marriage. Unless husband gonna come and usher me up out of this mess, stop talking about it. That's how you felt while you was going through it. But you've driven out. You walked through that valley. You went through the rainstorms. And some of those were torrential downpours. You dealt with yourself in those moments when you were sitting on the side of that spiritual road talking to the Lord like, God, I can't keep doing this. God, I gotta get out of this rainstorm. This ain't working. God done took you through. God done showed you that relationship. God showed it to you as what it really was. And if y'all had been through other relationships, he showed you yourself in all of these relationships, and you were the common denominator. And he walked you through that road, and he started to cleanse you, and he got you through that marathon, and then he got you to the bottom of the mountain. You was looking at that mountain like, I know you won't want me to walk up this mountain after we done went through that. And God was like, yes, I need you to come up here. Come up here. He needs you to come up higher. Come up here. and you had to climb the mountain while still dealing with rainstorms, while still dealing with certain things. But you passed your test. And she talked to this particular person about, yes, you've been through that. But you know what? There's a man for you that God has for you that's praying for you, but you got to stand. And it's going to happen quick, is what she said. I'm not coming here to prophesy what she prophesied. I'm coming here to tell you, okay, that you've come out the storm and the marriage is coming. Okay? For those of us that have been standers, I'm talking to my standers right now. I'm talking about the people that walked through their Rachel season, where Rachel knew Jacob was going to marry her, but had to walk through Jacob being married to her sister for how many years? I'm talking to y'all that witnessed your goddamn spouse doing whatever he was doing with whoever he was doing it with. God done told you that's your man. And you was like, how? One, where they are. Two, with who they with. You're like, oh, hell no. Ain't no way. Some of y'all was like that. God, you want me to say that? You want me to say that? I'm serious. Jesus be fast. To my roots. We've been stuck in the middle of the story of Ruth. We're about chapter 3 right by now. And we've been traveling with Naomi. And it's funny. God showed me this the other day. He gave me a vision. It was a photograph of my God-ordained spouse. And it was an old photograph of him. In the picture, he's sitting with the supermodel, Naomi Campbell. Now, I'm sitting there like, but it's interesting. The expression on his face is not, it wasn't, what have you. There was no interest there. Let me just put it that way. They may have been talking, I don't know, but it was a candid photo that somebody had gotten. And I'm like, Naomi. That in itself is a reference. Because remember, Naomi was the one that gave advice to Ruth about how to prepare for meeting Boaz. So the fact that the Lord's putting that photograph in my mind in itself tells you that you're preparing to walk into something new. Go ahead, God. Whatever you saying. God is putting you in the point where you're coming out. Because remember, in Ruth chapter 3, it's a scripture that talks about Boaz taking on the responsibility of Ruth. For he has seen what she has gone through. And he sees that she has honored her mother-in-law. And through her virtuousness, he decides, I'm going to be a husband. Pretty much what he's saying. Some of you, I'm talking to the ones that the Lord done already show you who your husband is. I want you to be honest. Raise your hand. The ones that the Lord done shown you who your husband is, especially the ones that you know that the Lord has shown you as an influential person. God had to walk you through your season of wilderness to even prepare you to be elevated enough spiritually to, one, cover them. 2, you to be able to stand in that elevation. You had to come up that mountain because, they need a woman like that. You couldn't be down there back all the way in the back of the valley where you were mentally, emotionally, mindset wise, all that kind of stuff, and think you was gonna marry that man. He up at the top of the mountain. He up elevated. He's surrounded by a bunch of people. You couldn't have just thought that God could have had you just swept away. But he had to walk you through your storm season because he had to mentally, emotionally prepare you. Because I'm seeing the scene from Cinderella when Whitney Houston brought Cinderella to the castle. I can get you here, but you gonna have to walk into this space by yourself. You had to go through all of that in the valley, climb the mountain. Why? Because he had to get you prepared so that when you walked in there, your character had been developed enough to be able to be observed by your king, your prince, what have you, in order to be able to walk into this marriage. The winds of change had to blow, and some of y'all was on that mountain like, God, this is a mountain and it's cold, and I'm on a mountain and you blowing winds up here. Because when do you usually see winds? When you climbing a mountain. And it usually happens when you get to the upper elevation of the mountain that you start to feel the wind. Tell me any movie you've ever watched that they were climbing a mountain and they didn't run into some type of turbulent winds. And that always happened when they were up near the top. But the blessing in that is that you're at a new beginning. You've come to the point in the journey that you're coming into the manifestation of what you're called to walk into in this marriage, because you elevated in the season where you walk through the rain. You walk through identifying yourself. You walk through the dark seasons. You walk through all of that. Which brings me also back to what I was saying in the previous video. That because you walked that, God is making your mountain into a plain. But guess what? A lot of us have been crying about the fact, where's our husband at? Where is he? Remember, Rachel had to wait for Jacob for 7 years. You think that towards the end of that 7 years, she wasn't concerned? Think about that for a minute. Come on, let's pause for a minute here. Rachel, who is in love with Jacob, ain't nobody ever think about what she was thinking about when she was watching Jacob have these kids with Leah. You think that she was not having doubts like, he done had kids with her. Maybe he's not going to leave her because that would be wrong. And I mean, I don't want to break up the family that he has, even though, yes, I am the sister, but then I'm going to have my sister looking at me wrong. You think she wasn't thinking that? Look, he done had all these kids with her. And he's smiling amongst the people. But internally, he's like, can I get away from this woman so I can be with my Rachel? That's the way some of your spouses have been. So they have had mountains they've had to climb. Some of your spouses did have children in other relationships. And they had to come out of agreement with those people. There's a scripture in Ezra where is it Ezra? It's somebody that is laying in front of the temple. It's either Ezra 2. somewhere Ezra 2 verses 3 through 10 or something like that. Or is it Ezra 10 verse 2 through 3? But Ezra is laying in front of the temple, and it's a scripture that talks about Ezra making the edict that men had to come out of agreement with foreign wives and children. Look it up. Some of these men had been in relationships. Some of them did have kids. Some of them may have gotten into relationships with women that had kids. Think about that. So some of y'all may have been looking at them and they were hanging around kids, and you were like, oh my God. Pause. Oh God, Lord, do you want me sad? I never said that before publicly. Okay. I've told you before that the Lord showed me my husband a year before he told me who my husband was. I was Googling something in relation to him. I was trying to find out some information. Nothing personal. It was something about what he does, career-wise. And I was looking up something in relation to that. Wasn't looking up anything private. Wasn't looking up nothing to that standpoint. I typed in, do we have a date for X, Y, and Z? Is what I really literally typed in. And candid photos popped up of this man. And I'm like, where did these come from? In one of the pictures, he was holding a child with a woman at sunset. And I'm like, now, I didn't know that the Lord was showing me that this was my husband. I had no idea anything about this. But I remember that when I saw that picture, my chest hurt. And I said, God, what the heck is this? What is this? I'm like, what's that? Why did I feel that at all? Because at this point, I have no idea who this man is to me at all. And I'm wondering, am I having some type of weird issue? But the fact of the matter is, I believe that was his sister's kids or something like that. But sometimes you can see stuff like that. And the point is, you will assume, it's like, oh, look at that. They got a wonderful looking family. And it's like, and God's sitting there telling you, that's not his kids or what have you. Some of you have been observant to your spouses, and you thought one thing, God's trying to tell you that's not what that is. Megan Michelle did a video where she was talking about a guy having been in a scenario where there was a woman trying to claim that he was the father of her child. And she was making the point of saying that sometimes the situation looks one way, but it's not. It's a threat to your relationship, but it isn't going to turn out the way it looks. And what it was she was talking about, the person had tried to accuse this guy of being the father of her children, but came out that the child she was supposed to be carrying was not his. I've seen this happen in a couple of different cases. So some of y'all will be looking at situations, you'll see that storm. You'll see all that kind of confusion, and you'll be sitting there like, God, what is this foolishness? I didn't ask for all of this, Rachel. What am I saying? I'm going to do the review of this song after this, but I'm not going. A lot of us have had to stand and say we're not moving from the spot in which God told us that was our God ordained spouse, even though things be looking cray cray. This was not where I was going with this word. Okay, God, I gave it to God, and this is where He's taking me. Look up Prophet Productions. Prophet Parham did that channel, and she tells her story of how her husband divorced her, married somebody else, stayed married to them for a period of time, came back and married her again. Because she was the one that was called to be married to him. So, what does that mean? Some of your husbands, I did a word a while ago where I talked about the ram in the bush. Remember, the ram was coming up the side of the mountain at the exact same time Abraham and Isaac were coming up the mountain. We have been coming up our mountains, but so have our husbands. Sorry about that. They come in with announcements whenever they feel like it. Anyway, but they're climbing up the mountain too. They are. And in the midst of them climbing up the mountain, pardon the interruptions, but as I was saying, the men are coming up the other side of the mountain. Carl Thomas created a song called Promise. Come on now. Speaking to this, where he talked about, I did a review on it, lyrical review for the song Promise. Look it up in Songs That Remind Me of You. He talked about climbing up the mountain and being willing to climb up the mountain for the person that he desired to be in relationship with. Your God ordained spouses have been climbing up the mountain. I was listening to a video from Just Emily again that I hadn't seen in several months, and I completely forgot she said this, and she was talking about how a lot of us take advantage of the fact that these men have been going through warfare just as much as we've been going through warfare. Some of them worse than what we've been going through. And a lot of us have felt like, well, we're going through something, they ain't going through nothing, because we don't see it. God has not put on display their warfare. He hasn't made it a public spectacle that they're going through a set of warfare. Thank God that He didn't. Because some of these people are in influential positions, and if they're in influential positions, if their warfare was public, it would be messing with their career. Bless God for that. But that doesn't mean that the pressure of having to go through the warfare, thank God for having praying women in their life, that as we have been praying for them, it has made their warfare easier. But they've still had to climb the mountain. But these men have been determined that no matter how high the mountain was, they were going to climb it. And because of that, they would go through whatever it took to get to us. As the song states of Jennifer Hudson, Jennifer Holliday, I'm Not Going, they're willing to crush any obstacle, strike any what have you, and kill the problem. A lot of them, that's what they've been fighting through, that we haven't seen it. You want me to say that? I have noticed the last few times I have seen my God ordained spouse, he be looking real frustrated. And he don't never look frustrated. He's the most positive person I've ever seen of all of the people in the industry that he's in. I have never seen him as frustrated as he's looked lately. I've been praying for it. They've been going through some things. You're supposed to stand as the watchman. You're supposed to stand as the prayer person. You're supposed to stand in the midst of their warfare. They are, remember I did a word on Sleeping Beauty. It's on part 3, I believe. I talk about the breakdown of Peter coming through the first gate, the second gate, and walking to where it was where they were praying for him. We have been the people praying for Peter. Our husbands were Peter. And our husbands had to get out of the first gate, meaning the things that they had to battle through. Some of them had to battle through stuff in their career industry. Then I talk about getting through the second gate, meaning they've come out of those battles, but they've been dealing with their own emotional turmoil. Then coming outside of that gate and having to fight the final battle with the queen. Because in Sleeping Beauty, he had to come out of the castle, fight his way out the castle from all of the minions and demons. He had to be led out by the 3 fairies, representing Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, that were speaking into his ear, directing him out. And then he had to fight the final battle by fighting the queen, who turned into a dragon and then threw her off. Your God-ordained spouse has had battles that they've been going through. And it wasn't one set of battles. It was this set of battles. Through this set of battles. Through that set of battles. Most recently, some of them have been dealing with counterfeit situations. And maybe that was that Jezebelic queen that they needed to overthrow. And we've been standing in the gap for them for that. Okay? But Stephanie P showed in her video that we're going to end up coming back because I can't even go into this fully. But we're going to come back. Hold on. I'll be right back.